Thank you for joining us. Lee and I, along with our guest Ben, will be responding to Stephen Hargrave's message, where he claims there is only a single access to heaven, which is through the Apostle John.
Allow me to say a few more things about where John is going. John is going up to heaven by a single access. And the reason why John is going up to heaven is because everybody can't go where he's going.
Right. That's right.
Very important. I have access to heaven. I have access as a child of God to all that heaven has. No, you don't. Not just like that. You do have access through John. I said through him. So you mean to tell me I have to go through John? Well, don't look now, but you are going through John now. Now you're going through him. You don't understand this. We're going through John's understanding because he's the only one that can go up there and show you what he saw. You couldn't go up there by yourself. So we depend on John's understanding, and we bless God for the gifting of the apostle.
Well, I'm going to jump in just to start off with and say the very first thing that caught my eye was, I think, almost in his first sentence. He tells us that the access to heaven was a single access. There was but one of them, which makes it very important then that we get to that single access to be able to access God. So the question then becomes, is that true?
That's a good question, Lee. I heard him preach this message, I think, or at least he's preached part of this message. And he really stresses that there's one access, there's one doorway to heaven, and that doorway is through John and John the apostle. And then they sort of allude to themselves being apostles. And you kind of have to wonder where they're trying to go with that. But scripture is clear to me that the only access is through Jesus Christ. So that really stands out to me when they say there's just this one access and it's through John the apostle.
Yeah, and I think it's clear throughout the message. He's expecting you, I think, to read between the lines. John is a euphemism, of course, for them, for the apostle, the office of apostle, right? And he returns to that, not as explicitly as they do sometimes, but he hints at it a lot, that there is one of the messages that he drives home is the authority of apostles, which is their banner theme.
I like that. That was a good take on that. It hadn't really occurred to me to word it like that. That's very appropriate though, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I saw him do it a lot throughout.
Yeah, there you are. Well, I'm not a Greek scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but more than any other group or any other topic, this has driven me back to the original languages as they talk. And I was looking for that single access there in the text, and it just isn't there. There's a door. It doesn't say it's a single door, doesn't say it's a double door, doesn't say that there's an escalator. It's just simply a door. It's a literary device that he is using to be able to tell a story. And it's almost disingenuous to turn it into a theological point. I found that there's a fallacy and maybe equivocation. I'm not sure. I'm searching in my brain, but it revolves around the use of words. When you're in a discussion and you're using a word like bear, you can use bear 3 or 4 different ways. So in the midst of the discussion, the term changes, and all of a sudden you're getting eaten as opposed to taking a turn. He does that with the word through. You never really know what he means when he says through. Does it mean that in order to get to heaven, we have to go through John, or in order to understand, we have to go through John? What does going through John mean? Do you have to read John? There's just no real definition to it, and therefore it makes it very malleable. It's not a solid thing at all.
Yeah, Yeah, that's a good point. My grandpa used to say, figures never lie, but liars always figure. It's always fuzzy.
Yeah.
Makes it easy.
But it's if I go to the pharmacy, if I come home and I have a prescription and you ask me where I got the prescription or who I got the prescription through, we could talk about I got it from the pharmacist because I took it out of the pharmacist's hand, or maybe I got it from the nurse because she handed it to me or whatever. But ultimately, it's the physician that is responsible for the production of the prescription. And whenever Stephen is talking, it doesn't make it back to the original source. It's always a secondary source that we're talking about. We get saved through the apostles, or we get saved through John, or whatever. But in reality, that simply isn't true. Salvation doesn't come through an apostle like it belongs to him. Salvation comes from Jesus.
So almost like they're a middleman, sort of setting themselves up in the position of a middleman, and want to make sure that you don't leave them out when you're making a transaction. Another thing that struck me in this phrasing was, he said something like, I have access as a child of God to all that heaven has. No, you don't. Not like that. You don't have access to heaven. As a symbol, and I think that they would read this way too, this could mean in the sense that John went and he really beheld the throne, and maybe he stood on an actual sea of glass, if there's such a thing, etc. But symbolically too, it means having a mystical experience, having a sort of personal relationship with God, having your own beatific vision. And to deny that to the congregation directly is a massive spiritual crime. To gatekeep at the door of heaven is ballsy. I mean, it's something, I suppose only an apostle would dare to do. But
last night I was looking at another section of a sermon that Ray had done, and he says in essence that, you say you can go in your prayer closet and pray to Jesus. Well, no, not really, because the only thing you're going to get is enough to take you to somebody who can thunder at you. An apostle can thunder at you. And I just thought, what you're doing is you're denying people access to God, or you're trying to do that, convincing them that there's no point in praying. So,
they've told the congregation on several occasions that you do not have direct access to Jesus, and that he will simply just give you an address or a location to go to, and that's all the information he's going to give you.
Yeah. So I think that I would disagree with that we do indeed have access to Jesus. And fortunately we do. And there's not a single entrance into heaven, and there's not somebody that we need to go through, but rather we have access.
mm-hmm.
This concludes our video. Thank you for bearing with us. The resource slides go by rather quickly for sake of time. You may wish to pause on them to read them. There is a link in the description box to the Google Classroom where you will find the resources for this video.
Disappointment is a bitter pill to swallow, paying back the hope I borrowed from someone I never knew. And it's a forfeit, humans in the suits of heroes, undressed by whispered conspiracies in quest for the truth. But if the truth is what you're looking for, you don't get to choose the answers anymore. So tell me